Welcome to The Truth About Taxes and Retirement. This podcast is brought to you by SavingYouTaxes.com and hosted by J. Barry Watts. As an advanced tax strategist and enrolled agent federally licensed by the IRS, Barry is uniquely qualified to go deeper into the Internal Revenue Code than most accountants. He understands and interprets its provisions, explaining how they'll help you reduce income taxes you owe so you can direct that previously wasted tax money into tax-free accounts that you can enjoy in your retirement years. Now, on today's episode.
Are you sitting on cash and you hate it because it's not growing? In fact, it's becoming worth less every day because of inflation, but you don't know what to do with it. Well, you are in for a real treat today as our host, Barry Watts, tells you about a new type of account that keeps cash safe, available to spend, and growing on The Truth About Taxes and Retirement.
Good news for you today. Welcome to The Truth About Taxes and Retirement. I am your host, J. Barry Watts, coming to you from the studios of our sponsor, the WealthCare Corporation, a tax strategy and financial management company dedicated to helping people retire with confidence and age gracefully with dignity. I've got good news for you today about retiring with confidence and aging with dignity, even in times like these, though it's harder than it used to be. These are tremendously uncertain times. I'm old enough to remember the Vietnam War and parts of the civil rights movement and the gold standard. Did you know that you used to be able to take $1 and hand it into the government and they would actually give you back $1's worth of physical gold in exchange?
You really are old, Barry.
I am, it really, it hurts my feelings because some of these things are going back to the 60s. The gold standard was a 72, 73 issue. And Nixon was president when they took us off the gold standard. So that no longer was $1 backed by any physical gold. The dollar's just backed by air. The government says, oh, it's worth $1. And at the same time that was happening, we got into an era of outrageous inflation. We had wage and price controls. In 1973, there was an Arab-Israeli war, and the United States backed Israel, as I think they should have. And as a result, the Arabs embargoed oil to the United States. So suddenly we didn't have the oil we need. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? And there was an energy crisis, and there were gas lines. And if I recall correctly, you could get your gas on Monday and Wednesday or Tuesday and Thursday.
We were odd and even.
And it had to do, odd and even had to do with your license plate number, if I recall correctly. It wasn't long after that then Watergate percolated up. We had the resignation of a president of the United States, and then ultimately one of his replacements made a speech where he told us we were mired in a malaise, because you always want a president to stand up and say, we are mired in a malaise. Which made it really easy for Ronald Reagan to come on the scene with his television commercial that you'll remember, Patrice, and some of our listeners will, where Reagan said, it's morning in America. And everybody inhaled deeply and relaxed, and suddenly pride was back in the country. But back in the malaise times, we had 13% inflation and CD rates at 18%. So that's the first 20 years of my life right there. It was a time that would shake your confidence. And it's exactly where we're at today. So the issues are even the same. Now, some of them are a little bit different, but it's having much the same influence. Just yesterday, I had coffee. Yesterday afternoon, I do this about once every 6 weeks with a young friend of mine. He's 28 years old. And a few years ago, now 10, I suppose, he went off to university, actually went to Hillsdale College up in Michigan, and got his education. And the long story short is he came home an atheist. And so he and I get together every few weeks and we sit over a cup of coffee, and he explains to me the latest reasons that atheism is the only way to go. And I overstate the case a little bit because he's extremely respectful about it, and he acknowledges that he's just searching. And I talked to him about the man Jesus Christ, who I believe is God incarnate, who died on the cross to pay for our sins. and about how if he will follow him, it will change his life. So he and I had this ongoing conversation. Well, one of the things he did when he sat down yesterday, we don't just talk about spiritual things, is he told me he was building a potato box.
Potato box?
Yeah. Why are you building a potato box? Well, he said, because they cost $100. And I figured I could build it for half that. I'm like, so is this a box that's going to sit in the kitchen, or is this a box that you're going to put in the pantry? He said, no, outside in the garden. It's a box where you grow your potatoes above ground, but you put dirt in this box and you grow your potatoes in a box above ground. Okay. All right. That's fine. I'm like, why are you growing potatoes in a box? And really the question was, why are you growing potatoes? Because, potatoes are pretty cheap. You can't get a good tomato, but potatoes are potatoes. So I'm not going to grow potatoes, but I'm like, why are you growing potatoes? And he said, because I'm scared. He said, I feel food insecure. Well, isn't that interesting? In this day and age, if you just go back 2 years, would we have ever dreamed that a 28-year-old college-educated man living in middle America would be scared about the security of his food source? So he's growing potatoes in a box.
No, that's not a good statement on our economy or our society.
Really, it's much broader than the economy. Yeah. It's about our society and where we are. And we do need it to be morning in America. And hopefully some leadership will arise to help shift away from the malaise. But the big point that I want to make is, just like when I was a kid coming up, there were plenty of things to be scared about. There's always something to erode your confidence. And there is even today. Yet there is some good news on the scene, despite the high inflation of these days. And despite a president and an administration that is failing by most every measure. And despite historically high fuel costs and the Russian invasion of Ukraine and higher costs at the grocery store, there is good news. And that's what I'm going to be sharing with you on the podcast today. Now, in times of uncertainty like we are in, people like to stay in cash. And it's never a bad idea to have cash. I might have a little of it hidden around here or there myself. Mm-hmm. What's that old saying? Cash is king?
I do believe so.
Yeah, it is. And my young friend at the coffee shop is not only planting potatoes, guess what else he's doing? He's hoarding cash. Oh. But here's the problem, Patrice. If you hoard cash, number one, it doesn't earn anything. Right now, banks in my town are paying as little as 0.25% on a 1-year CD. So that's not going to get you anywhere. In fact, number two, it doesn't keep up with inflation, because inflation is approaching 8% per year. So if you're making 8% minus so I'm sorry, I didn't say it correctly. If inflation is 8%, well, you can subtract off the 0.25% interest you're getting on your money that the bank's paying you on the certificate of depreciation. And what that means is your cash is losing about 7.75% per year in purchasing powers. Now, a couple of years of that, and you know what the average retiree is going to be saying, Patrice?
Let's see. Would you like fries with that?
That's right. Would you like fries with that? So I know that no one goes into retirement planning on having to go back to work, or planning to need to supplement their retirement. That if you're having to supplement it, is it really retirement? Wouldn't that be a good question to ask?
Well, in some ways it would be, but for this argument, no, it's not.
Yeah, nothing wrong with working in retirement if that's what you want to do. In fact, I think it would be good for you. In fact, I don't intend to just quit and go sit at the house when my time comes to retire.
Your wife is not going to like that either.
Nah, she doesn't want me sitting around the house either. But so I think it's a good thing to have something to do, but I don't want to have to do something. I don't want to be trying to make next week's potato budget. If I don't work today, I can't buy potatoes for next week. Would you like fries with that? Maybe they wouldn't even offer fries. I don't know, because fries are expensive when we run out of fries. Yeah. When we run out of potatoes, well, that would make us Irish, wouldn't it? The great Irish potato famine.
The famine. Well, we'd have to emigrate to some other country.
But because there's so many places to go. And isn't it interesting? Because we're actually recording this podcast on the day before St. Patty's Day. So isn't it interesting that we wound up talking about Irish potatoes today?
Potato box to French fries to St. Patrick's Day. Wow.
So Patrice, here's the problem. All the people who tune in to our podcast to get news and information about taxes and retirement suddenly are thinking this is just a comedy show and I'm not very funny.
it's not a comedy show because what you're saying is fact.
Well, yeah, and it's not comedic at all, but I try to make it interesting. So here's the deal. I'm going to share with you some good news today about what you can do with cash if you're inclined to hoard cash. If the concern over the upset in the economy and the markets and the governments is something that's causing you to hang on to cash, well, there's a way that you can keep your cash liquid, 100% accessible to you anytime you want it, with 100% safety of your principal.
Put it under the mattress, but it's not earning anything, Barry.
Yeah. And so how about this? Instead of putting it under the mattress where your principal is not safe because the house could blow down, the house could burn down, or the neighbor could come into the house and know to reach under the mattress and get the money out.
Ooh.
How about instead have it in a place where you have 100% safety of principal, 100% accessibility of your money to spend it anytime you want. And yet you get exposure to stock market related growth rates that can only go up and can never go down and destroy your value in your cash. That would be a pretty good deal.
It sounds like it's too good to be true.
How many times do I hear that in a week? It's interesting. I've got a new person working in our office that I'm training. And so she sits in a lot of meetings with me, and she was in a meeting just early this week. And it was a Zoom meeting. I'm talking online with somebody, and I think this person was out on the Pacific Coast. And I had explained to him all these things we were going to do for him. And he's like, yep, that's good. Let's do it. Make it happen. And my new assistant sitting next to me said, wow, that was incredible, but it just sounded too good to be true. Patrice, I hear that all the time. And the reason it sounds too good to be true for the most part is because people aren't listening. They haven't heard. Mm-hmm. They don't know what's possible and available. They're still working on 1979 ideas. I mean, let's face it. Nothing I talk about is anything my grandpa ever heard of before he died in 79. And all of it is the kind of stuff that he would be suspicious of.
Yes.
Extremely suspicious of. The world has moved on. Things, they have changed. There has been tremendous innovation. And one of the innovations is in the way that you handle cash. And you see, the people that we see at the WealthCare Corporation, our clients here and at our sister company, SavingYouTaxes.com, are almost universally conservative people. Mm-hmm. They're looking for conservative places to put their cash so it'll be there when they need it later on. And the first thing that conservative investors with cash are looking for is safety. Well, good news. This type of an account is 100% principal guaranteed, safe and insured. Now, the second thing that people are looking for if they're conservative investors with cash is usually liquidity. They want access to their money in case they need it. And guess what? I've got more good news, because the same account that is 100% principal guaranteed is also fully liquid. You can put in $1 today and take out $1 as early as tomorrow. It has full free liquidity. So it's absolutely great to have safety and liquidity, but the other thing that conservative investors with cash are also looking for is growth of their money. Well, that's where the good news gets to be even better news, because this particular account guarantees stock market related rates of return, plus a 2.5% guarantee in the years when the stock market doesn't give return. So let's start with that guarantee. Here's the way it works. The guarantee is that the account will pay 2.5% per year, no matter how the stock market or the economy performs. Now, there is a fee with an account like this, and just generally the fee is usually in the 1.5% to 2% range. So let's just pretend the stock market isn't performing and your cash account is getting the 2.5% guarantee. Well, then you take the fee out of that, which is going to be 1.5% to 2%. So the worst possible thing that can happen to your cash in an account like this is that it earns 2.5% and pays a fee of about 2%, leaving you with a gain of 0.5% or so. And I have seen times, Patrice, when 0.5% of growth would be something to celebrate.
How about now? You just mentioned what you're getting on a CD.
Yeah, well, in particular, what's going on in the markets right now.
Oh, yeah, you don't know.
But truthfully, 0.5% of growth is not what we're looking for. That's not very exciting. We need something richer than 0.5%. And that's where more good news comes in, because this account offers a stock market indexed type of earnings mechanism that includes the index of the S&P 500 that you're familiar with. So you have the opportunity to earn in this 100% protected, guaranteed, fully liquid, 100% accessible account, a stock market like rate of return that's somewhere typically in the range of 4 to 6% per year. How's that sound on your cash?
Too good to be true.
It's available every day and twice on Sunday. All you've got to do is know where to go get it. And Patrice, I've got a couple other bonuses that come in here that are interesting.
Oh, wow.
If you die while you're holding an account like this, it's backed by an insurance company. So they will give your heirs income tax free, all your account value plus roughly a 50% bonus on top of what you originally deposited into your account. And if you needed home health care, you also get more than you deposited into your account to cover an expense like that.
Wait a minute, Barry, let's go through this one more time because you've just thrown so much good news at me that I want to make sure I got it all. This is safe. Right. This is safe.
Check. It's absolutely safe and guaranteed.
It's liquid.
Check. It's fully liquid on days that end in Y. Let's see, Monday, Tuesday,
all right.
Thursday.
And you mentioned growth. Now, the growth is better than you're going to get with a CD, that's for sure.
It earns based on the return of the stock market. That is correct.
And what about those years when the stock market doesn't do well?
Well, then it guarantees you 2.5% per year in those years.
All right.
So the worst earnings you'll ever have will be 2.5%.
And if you die?
They toss in a free bonus, tax-free, to your heirs of about an additional 50% beyond what your account is worth.
Why haven't we heard about something like this before? This really sounds like there's no downside to it, but where has it been all my life?
Because you haven't been listening. Think about this, Patrice. Think about how many people listen to our podcast. There are a lot of them and the audience is growing. But think about how many people don't listen to our podcast. And there's a pretty good chance that I'm the only guy in the country telling this particular story. Why? Because people are busy. You, for example, you're taking care of your 90-year-old mother. And there's another listener somewhere who's taking care of her preschool or school-aged children. And there's a grandpa somewhere. He hasn't heard of this because he's busy keeping grandma happy, planting his garden in springtime, and going to see his grandkids play soccer. And so while everybody pretty much is interested in something like this, they don't know that it exists. So they don't even know to look for it. They don't know where to look for it. And if they were going to go look for it, they don't know how to ask about it.
But who's talking about it? We'd listen
just
to when we're talking about it.
Welcome to The Truth About Taxes and Retirement. I'm Barry Watts, your host. I'm talking about it. Right. And this is why United Life, a company with an A+ superior rating, has contracted with our firm, American Tax Strategies, to bring this account to the marketplace. It's so that people who need to stay in cash aren't forced to earn 0.25% or less. They can keep their cash, keep it safe, keep it liquid, and still earn stock market rates of return while it is invested. It's fabulous. It's exciting. And I'm excited to bring this good news to our listeners on the truth about taxes and retirement.
Well, then the big question becomes, how do we get into this? How does someone who's interested get into it?
It's pretty simple. You do have to qualify. But qualifying isn't necessarily difficult. There are some questions we ask related to health, because you remember this is built on the back of an insurance contract. There's an insurance company involved. And so here, if this is interesting to you, here's what you should do. Go to our website. And at the website, www.savingyouTaxes.com, you'll find a contact form where you can reach out to us, or there's a link. You can even go to our calendar right there and easily schedule an appointment. Or there's even a phone number where you can call us and we can schedule a time to talk with you. And in that conversation, we can answer any questions you have and be sure that you qualify, because there are some health qualifications. But Patrice, if somebody doesn't qualify, it may be that their spouse qualifies, or it may be that one of their children qualifies. And so you could actually do something like this on your children's health, but you as the owner of it, since it's your money, in less than 30 minutes, start to finish, We can answer the call, say hello, have the introduction, know whether you will qualify, and actually have the account approved for issuance and ready to fund in less than 30 minutes. So the way that you begin to do that is by going to savingyoutaxes.com. And there you'll find everything you need to connect with us and learn about this new, unique account that's changing the way that people hold their cash. And it's exciting. I'm so excited to be the first person ever to tell you about it. Right here on The Truth About Taxes and Retirement, brought to you by the WealthCare Corporation, where our purpose is to help people retire with confidence and age gracefully with dignity. Until next time, I'm your host, Barry Watts, reminding you that when it comes to retirement and investing and managing your stash of cash, if you don't get the taxes right, nothing else matters.
This podcast is a production of the WealthCare Corporation. The concepts discussed are for informational and educational purposes only and should not be implemented without first consulting with your own legal, tax, and investment counsel. This has not been an offer to buy, sell, or invest in securities, and this information is to be taken as educational concepts and not as advice for you specifically. The lawyers like us to remind you that all investment involves risk, and you could lose money. Past performance is never a guarantee of future results. Tax strategy services are provided by American Tax Strategies, LLC. Investment advisory services are provided by WealthCare Asset Management, LLC. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuer. Product and rider availability may vary by state. Product issued by United Life Insurance Company on form number ICC20-FPIUL-BC. Form number may vary by state.
Thank you for listening to The Truth About Taxes and Retirement podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of SavingYouTaxes.com. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional tax and investment advice. Always seek the advice of your own qualified advisor with any questions you may have regarding taxes and investing.